The story begins on a cold Kansas night. A blazing object tears across the sky before crashing into one of Luthor Corp's experimental cornfields outside Smallville. Security alarms immediately sound across the property, and within minutes, black SUVs surround the smoking crater. Scientists cautiously approach the wreckage, expecting to find a meteorite. Instead, they find a baby. Standing behind them is Lionel Luthor. Unlike most people, Lionel doesn't see a frightened child. He sees opportunity. The strange spacecraft, the glowing symbols, everything about the infant screams value. Lionel orders everyone present to sign lifetime confidentiality agreements. Every piece of evidence is transported to Luthor Corp's underground research facility, while the baby is quietly taken back to the Luthor mansion. When Lionel notices the child's impossible resilience only days later, he smiles. I have got a new son, not because he wants to save this helpless orphan, but because the child already possesses abilities no ordinary human should have. The world is told that Lionel secretly adopted another son. No one questions it. The Luthors have enough influence to make almost any story believable. Lex is only a young boy when Clark arrives. At first, he's excited. He finally has a brother, someone to play with, someone to grow up beside. For a brief moment, they are inseparable, until the day everything changes. While the boys are playing in the mansion gardens, Lex becomes frustrated after losing another game. Then, he quickly found out that Clark is more than human, but Lionel isn't horrified. He's fascinated. From that day forward, Clark stops being treated like a son. He becomes a project. Every new ability is carefully documented. Every display of strength is measured. Every weakness is cataloged. Lionel hires scientists instead of tutors, psychologists instead of loving parents. Clark never learns kindness. He learns efficiency. When his heat vision first appears, Lionel teaches him how to cut steel. When he discovers superhearing, Lionel teaches him corporate espionage. When Clark learns to fly, Lionel immediately begins discussing military applications. Every extraordinary gift becomes another tool to expand Luthor Corp's influence. Meanwhile, Lex watches from the sidelines. He sees the difference. Whenever Clark succeeds, Lionel praises him. Whenever Lex succeeds, Lionel simply demands more. For years, Lex desperately tries to earn the same approval. He never receives it. Clark does. Eventually, Lex stops blaming his father. He starts blaming Clark. As the brothers grow older, they drift further apart. Clark becomes everything Lionel wants. Confident, intelligent, absolutely loyal. He genuinely believes strength exists to establish order. Mercy, compassion, and forgiveness are weaknesses that allow lesser people to exploit those above them. Those aren't Clark's own conclusions. They're Lionel's, repeated every day for decades until they become Clark's own beliefs. By adulthood, Clark Luthor has become something terrifying. Publicly, he serves as vice president of Luthor Corp, standing beside Lionel during every major announcement. Media praises him as the future of the company. Investors admire his calm confidence. But behind closed doors, Clark becomes Lionel's enforcer. Hostile corporate takeovers end overnight after CEOs mysteriously change their minds. Whistleblowers disappear before reaching the press. Corrupt governments suddenly sign contracts heavily favoring Luthor Corp after private meetings with Clark. No one can ever prove wrongdoing, but everyone understands one thing. If Clark Luthor visits your office, your answer is no longer yours to make. Luthor Corp expands faster than any corporation in history. Entire industries fall under Lionel's control. Military contractors, energy companies, satellite networks, artificial intelligence, and medical technology. Every success is built upon the quiet fear that somewhere nearby stands Clark Luthor. Lex watches all of it. At first, he convinces himself Clark has no choice. Surely Lionel is manipulating him. Surely the brother he once played with still exists somewhere underneath. Then comes the incident that changes everything. A small farming community refuses to sell its land to Luthor Corp. The residents have lived there for generations. They simply want to keep their homes. Lionel gives Clark one instruction: convince them. Clark arrives alone. He doesn't threaten anyone. Instead, he flies directly above the town in broad daylight. For the first time, ordinary people witness what Clark truly is. He melts an abandoned water tower with his heat vision and calmly tells the townspeople that resisting Luthor Corp will only make life harder for everyone. Within 48 hours, every family signs. Lex quietly reviews the security footage. He doesn't see a monster enjoying cruelty. He sees something worse. Someone who believes they're helping. Clark genuinely genuinely thinks fear creates peace, that absolute power prevents unnecessary conflict, that people make better decisions once impossible choices are removed. Lex realizes something horrifying. Clark isn't evil because he enjoys hurting people. He's evil because Lionel successfully convinced him that this is what leadership looks like. That night, Lex confronts Clark inside Luthor Manor. He asks one simple question: when did people stop mattering to you? Clark answers almost immediately: they matter. They're simply incapable of making the right decisions. Lex stares at his brother. You sound exactly like him. Clark doesn't even deny it. He was right. For the first time in his life, Lex feels afraid of Clark. Not because Clark is stronger, because Clark no longer questions himself. From that night onward, Lex begins secretly investigating Luthor Corp. The deeper he digs, the worse everything becomes. Illegal human experimentation, political assassinations disguised as accidents. Entire governments are manipulated through fear. Military technology sold to both sides of international conflicts. Every trail leads back to one man, Lionel Luthor, and standing beside him is Clark. Lex finally understands that he cannot save his brother by talking to him. He has to stop him. Quietly, Lex begins assembling allies. Scientists rejected by Luthor Corp, former employees who escaped, journalists whose investigations were buried, military officers who no longer trust Lionel. He secretly funds research into extraterrestrial materials recovered from the spaceship that brought Clark to Earth for the first time. Lex isn't trying to become more powerful. He's trying to level the playing field. Meanwhile, Lionel discovers what Lex is doing. Instead of becoming angry, he smiles. Because this is exactly the lesson he always wanted his sons to learn. Power is never given. It's taken. Lionel summons Clark inside his office. Your brother has chosen his side. Clark says nothing. Lionel looks out across Metropolis before giving his final order. If Lex Luthor stands against this family, then he is no longer your brother. Clark quietly nods. Across the city, Lex watches Clark leave Luthor Tower. For years, he wanted nothing more than to surpass his adopted brother. Now, he only hopes he can survive him. The world believes the greatest rivalry in history was always destined to be Superman versus Lex Luthor. But in this reality, it becomes something far more tragic. Two brothers, raised under the same roof. One shaped into the perfect weapon. The other was forced to become the only man willing to stop him. One story ends here, but another is already waiting. Subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.